push the door open with my feet, climb up on top of the plane, and I'm putting my life jacket on, and that plane starts to sink quickly. Plane's gone. I inflate the life vest, and now I'm just bobbing around in the ocean. And that was 2 minutes between the first engine stopping and me being in the water floating around.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm back with Adam Barney for episode 2. If you haven't checked out episode 1, Derek will put it somewhere around here. Adam, again, thank you very much for coming on.
Very welcome.
This is definitely a fun episode and a fun meeting for me, so it's awesome.
I appreciate it. I'm going to try my best.
So you currently fly a turbine commander.
Yes.
But you did have another commander before.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the one that we're going to get. That's that one?
That's that one.
We'll get a close-up of that tattoo for everyone a little bit later on. Tell us about that one. How long did you own that aircraft?
I bought the Shrike. Is a Shrike 500S.
Okay.
1978 Shrike 500S. I bought it in 2019, and it had an overhaul. It had new interior, new paint, some avionics put in it. I took it and then put a full Garmin package in it. It's 6-cylinder pistons.
Okay.
IO 540s. But yeah, it was awesome plane. It was perfect for my mission. I flew a lot to the Bahamas and back then.
Right.
So anywhere in a 4 or 5 hour flight radius, it was just perfect for.
Yeah. You flew it all over the place, right?
I flew everywhere. I had 500 hours in that airplane.
Right.
Yeah, just flying it around, mostly single pilot.
Yep.
I fly a lot for work. We didn't talk about it last time, but I own my own business, and with what we do a lot of site visits. So we design commercial buildings, and I do it all over the United States. But back then it was primarily in the Southeast. So I'd fly to North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, right. Alabama, anywhere in Florida, and I could do that a lot more efficiently than I could do it in a car or
right.
having to take a commercial flight and be gone for 2 days.
Yeah.
So that's why I bought the plane.
Well, I say it all the time. If you're doing commercial flight, you're burning a day just in travel each way.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's easier to just get up at 6 a.m. in the morning, get the airplane ready, get out of here, and then fly wherever you're going to go. You can probably still do the meeting and be back on the same day.
Most of the time I could, yeah. 90% of the time, that's what I would strive to do. Weather gets in the way sometimes, but then, you're at a cool airport or you find a neat FBO or you make the best of it and I can work remote. But yeah, it is a lot nicer flying my own airplane for work than having to depend on commercial airlines.
And generally speaking, general aviation, within 20 minutes of the airport, you'll find a decent to excellent barbecue place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Pretty
definitely.
much.
Yeah, and in the South or in the West, you'll find some good taco places too.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm doing Dallas a lot now, and
right.
I'm at a bunch of different airports. I flew to San Antonio a couple weeks ago. Awesome city. Never been to San Antonio, and
it's on my list. I haven't been there yet.
It was so cool. It was amazing people, really cute town, cute river walk, and they've got CAA fuel.
Okay,
so,
that works.
Yeah, that's always. I plan my trips around CAA fuel now.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Not a sponsor for CAA, but we can be.
So moving on inside of that journey with the Shrike, you used to go to Key West quite a lot with that one as well, correct?
Yep. I flew to Key West, so we can just dive right into it. No pun intended. I'm always up for flying, no matter what. Anytime I'll fly. If I can make it work with work and personal life, I will always do it. A friend of mine had missed a flight in Key West and had asked if I could come down and pick it up, fellow pilot. And the day before, or 2 days before, I had flown from Alabama to here in Apopka.
Right.
It was a 2-hour flight. Mm-hmm. And then I was flying to Key West, and in that plane, she cruised at 175 knots. So about an hour and a half flight down to Key West, 2 hours maybe at the most. So he had called me on Friday and said, hey, or on Saturday and said, hey, could you come pick me up? And I said, sure. First thing in the morning, I'll get up. I'll leave about 9. 8:30, something like that, and I'll fly down. Beautiful morning. It was August 9th, August 13th, 3 years ago now. And I hopped in the plane. I had the FBO fuel it for me in Alabama.
Right.
And we'll touch on that, but they fueled it, and it held 164 gallons of fuel, I think 160 usable, 155 usable. So that gives me about 5.5 hours duration in the airplane.
Right.
It burned 32 gallons an hour consistently. You know, I run lean of peak, one of those guys.
Yep.
So got in the airplane, knew that I had flown for 2 hours. That was on Flight Aware, thankfully, as well. So I know that I've got another, 3.5 hours worth of fuel in the airplane. I'm going to Key West. I'm going to make my buddy pay for the expensive fuel in Key West and buy me lunch, and then I'm going to fly back.
Yeah.
Because he missed his flight. So file instrument, I would say, since I got my instrument rating, 95% of the time I always file. Get in the airplane, beautiful weather, fly down. I filed at like 9,000. Key West approach. Well, they transfer you to Navy approach first. So they bring me down to, I think it was 3,000 feet. They slowly stair step you down. They were landing, I believe the runways, they've got Niner and,
I think it's 9027.
Yeah, in Key West. It's been a few years since I've been back down there. But so they were landing 27. They vectored me around to the east side of the island in order to land 27, and they were going to give me, kind of a weird base leg, whatever. I was 13 miles out at 3,000 feet, and my right motor just stops. Unexpectedly, I'm flying, just fat, dumb, and happy. I really had to pee. I remember I had to pee so bad. I'm like, I need to land this plane. No, that's
Yep.
I had a cup of coffee, and I was like, I just want to get on the ground so I can pee.
That's our age as well, though.
Yeah.
What happens.
So right motor just stops immediately. It was crazy. Training kicks in, all the switches and stuff for it are overhead in the commander. So boom, fuel pumps are on, mixture rich, prop throttle, everything full forward. I'm trying to restart. I look down at my fuel gauge. It shows I have 43 gallons of fuel. I look at my fuel, my Garmin fuel computer. It's matching. I have no idea what's going on. Right. So try to restart. Declare an emergency. While I'm doing all that with my right hand, I'm flying and I'm declaring an emergency. And they are telling me I could land in Homestead, which is way behind me. I could land at the Navy base, or I could land at Key West. So I go straight. I think Navy base was the closest. So I aim towards the Navy base. When I finished that radio call, my left engine stopped. And it got real quiet. Really, really quiet. And if you've ever been in a twin or any plane that's a piston and it gets quiet, you're either on the ground or you're in a really bad situation, one or the other. And I just remember how eerie it was because it was so quiet. Again, same thing, try to restart the left engine, nothing. So I radio back up to Navy, tell them what's going on. I've had a dual engine failure. It was weird. My body, I had already pitched for best glide with my left hand, and I didn't even know I did it. Right. And I looked down at my airspeed indicator, and boom, I think it's 110 knots, or miles an hour, because everything in miles an hour on that. So I'd already pitched for best glide. My gear are up, my flaps are up, and I'm looking at ForeFlight, which is right in front of me, and I'm looking at my glide circle, and it's just in the blue. It's not over land. So they're like, well, are you going to make it? And I said, nope. I said, I'm aiming towards the weather balloon. So if you guys have ever been to Key West, there's they call it something, I forget, but
Sugar Key.
Yeah, there's
a weather balloon or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think there's some, I don't know, Gertrude or something. I don't know, whatever. But there's big weather balloons up there, and it's a good landmark, and it's pretty much due south of where I was at. So I said, I'm aiming towards the weather balloon. I am going to ditch. I'm going to start swimming towards the weather balloon. Send somebody after me. And so at that point, now I'm just preparing for this crash. I tighten my seatbelt. I grab my iPad and everything, and I chuck it to the seat next to me. And I don't know how you guys fly, but when I'm alone in the plane, or at that point in time when I was alone in the plane, I'd have my cell phone in the passenger seat next to me, co-pilot seat. I'd have, stuff over there, and that was just, where I kept things. I didn't even think about grabbing my cell phone. Didn't even think about it. I had my wallet in my pocket, and I had my shoes on my feet. Yeah. And I was just worried about getting knocked out. I was like, I'm going to land this plane. I'm not going to let this plane kill me, but I don't want to get knocked out and drowned. That was my biggest fear, because I don't have any water landing. I've never flown a seaplane. I don't know anything about that. But I always remember Bob Hoover. You fly it all the way into the crash, all the way into it. And I had talked to some people in the past about, you always go through what ifs. How would you handle a situation? And it jumped into my mind. I was like, okay, when I'm about 50 feet off, I'm going to dump my flaps. I'm going to eke a little bit more glide out of this, and I'm going to slow myself down. And that's exactly what I did. The flaps on the Commander are hydraulically driven, and there's an electric auxiliary hydraulic pump. So I was 50 feet off the deck, hit the flaps, ballooned me up about 100 feet. So that was nice. And then as I started to come back down, I just started to ease back on the yoke, and I kept my feet right on the rudder pedals, and I aimed towards that weather balloon. I could see the weather balloon, and that was my point of reference. So I had both hands on the yoke. Everything was tight. There was nothing in front of me. I didn't open my door. I should have opened my door. So if there's a mistake in this, the Shrike has an option for a pilot side door, and I had that, thankfully. I didn't have a life raft because I'm just flying to Key West. I fly to Key West all the time. Not a big deal. You're over the ocean for 15 minutes, whatever. Right. I had life vests because we're required to per the FAA. Yeah. But, we can talk about what I would do different now. So 50 feet off the deck, throw in the flaps. I just keep pulling back on the yoke, pulling back on the yoke, pulling back on the yoke. The tail empennage bottom hits first, right? And that was very loud, not violent, but just very, very loud, like hitting a really heavy wave in a boat.
Right.
And then I kept pulling back on the yoke, and I kept it straight with the rudder pedals, and it just very gracefully laid down in the water. And I remember looking around once I came to a complete stop, which was very quick, but not in a violent way. Like again, it was like chopping the throttle on a boat, on a V-hull boat. I felt like this, and I looked around, and I laughed, and I was like, not dead. I literally said it out loud. I'm like, I'm not dead. I was like, okay, cool. Now what? And again, I'm not a religious person, but my life jackets were the cheap inflatable life jackets that are in the little saran wrap things, were in a drawer in the back of my airplane, and the Commander's long. It's 12 foot long in the cabin. Yeah. One of those drawers had opened and had flung a life jacket onto my passenger seat.
Nice. And
I looked to my right, and there's a life jacket, and I almost didn't grab it because I'm a strong swimmer. I was on swim team, high school, college. I knew I could swim, and I was like, I'm going to grab this life jacket just because I could need it.
Yeah.
Grab it. Push the door open with my feet, climb up on top of the plane, and I'm putting my life jacket on, and that plane starts to sink quickly. I mean, the plane was intact. It was fine, but now all this water's rushing into the cabin, and it's just blop, 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 blop. Within 45 seconds, it was gone.
Wow.
I was actually more concerned because I was struggling putting the life jacket on, and that's a thing to pilots. Test your life jackets out and know how to put them on, because I had never put on one of those cheapy life jackets, and there's straps and stuff all over the place, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, I'm going to drown because I can't get this life jacket on. It's not the plane crash that's going to kill me. It's the stupid life jacket. Yep. So finally figure that out. Plane's gone. I inflate the life vest, and now I'm just bobbing around in the ocean. And that was 2 minutes between the first engine stopping and me being in the water floating around. And then to wrap that part of it up, I mean, I knew I hadn't panicked or gotten I don't know, frustrated or had any issues up until that point. But now that all the excitement's over, I got a ton of adrenaline. I was alone 13 miles from shore. I couldn't see, and there were 3 to 6 foot swells.
Right.
So like I could see stuff and then it'd go away. So the swells were taller than me, and they were crashing over my head. And it wasn't violent, but it was enough to where, you know, every 30 seconds you were getting water over your face.
Right.
So that's when I panicked a little bit, and I had to talk to myself and go, you know what? It's going to be at least an hour before anybody gets out here. And I was trying to focus on positives. I was like, well, who knows what happened? I'm going to get a helicopter ride out of this. I'll get to ride in a basket. The U.S. Coast Guard has no helicopters in Key West. They sold them all. So there's no helicopters. You don't get helicopter rides.
That's good to know.
Yeah, just to let you know. So it took about an hour of floating around, and then I saw three or four boats. I think it was 3 come from the west going directly to the east, and they were about probably a mile and a half out. And my life jacket was yellow. I took the life jacket off and was waving it around over my head, trying to get them to see me, and they didn't. They just went by. So that was the second time I started to panic a little bit. I'm like, it's going to be okay. I'm just going to keep swimming towards shore. It is what it is. About 20, 30 minutes later, I see another boat come from the right, back from where they came, and a lot closer to me this time. So I did the same thing, and I'm waving this life jacket, doing whatever I can do, and he got directly in front of me, and then started going to my right. And I'm like, I'm never going to get found. This is going to be horrible. And then I started yelling, and he found me. He finally just looked, and he saw the life jacket, and he was almost 45 degrees off of me at that point, and came over and picked me up out of the water. And that was a Marion County off-duty sheriff's officer who picked me up. That guy saved my life 100% because the current was horrible at that point in time. I started the swim feature on my Garmin watch, and I had made, this is stupid dork engineer stuff. I was like, okay, well, at least I'll track where I'm at maybe. So I started the swim feature on my Garmin watch, and it had showed, it's crazy. And I can give you a screenshot of that. Like it shows the path that I drifted / swam. And I went about a mile and a half, I think. But out of 13 miles to the nearest landmass, my mindset was that I was just going to keep swimming till I couldn't swim anymore. Yeah. But yeah, he picked me up, and then they didn't know what to do with me. Like, was I the Coast Guard's problem? Was I the Sheriff's Department's problem? I'm not dead. Nobody died. No, I didn't break anything other than my own plane, which is covered by insurance. So what do they do? So I filled out about 4 different reports. He brought me in to the key that the weather balloon's on. I forget the name of it. Key. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. And then he's like, all right, well, I'll see you later. And I'm like, dude, I don't have a cell phone. I got a wallet, and I've got my shoes. Well, I kept my shoes on because I figured, you know what, I'm going to need shoes. He was kind enough. He's like, where do you want to go? And the only phone number that I knew memorized at the time was my wife's. And I called her, and I immediately was like, not dead. And thankfully she was happy that I wasn't dead.
That's a phone call you don't want to make.
Yeah, that was a phone call. She handled it very, very, very well. And they all got, like, her and a couple other pilot friends of mine got in their airplane, flew down, and picked me up that night. And the friend that I was going to meet in Key West wanted to know where I was going to be, and I said, take me to the Tree Bar. So I had the police officer drop me off at the Tree Bar in Key West, and then proceeded to drink myself into oblivion for the rest of the evening. And
then tell your friend they owe you a plane now.
And everybody's like, well, how long did it take you to get back in a private plane? I was like, well, that night I flew back in a 310. So it was fine. It wasn't the plane's fault. Well, it was, but
Diagnosis wise, okay, but few different things is how fast did you have to notify the FAA?
I think that the tower had already notified the FAA. Okay. If I remember, I think I got a call the next morning from the FAA. So that was almost immediate.
Right.
Yeah, they notify the FAA and the NTSB. And then I had to notify insurance as well. So the NTSB comes up with the cause of the investigation, right? They're not any type of punitive body. They just figure out why it happened. And then the FAA is the punitive legal ramifications to the issue body.
Right.
So the NTSB figures out what happened, works with FAA, and then the FAA then renders punishment or says everything's fine. So it was an interesting process. So I talked with the NTSB guys. Everybody was completely professional. The FAA was completely professional. The insurance company was professional. The NTSB was professional. All the law enforcement was professional. Everybody did a great job. The only governing body that I had a problem with was the EPA. The EPA was the one. So this EPA guy calls me 2 days later and starts tearing me a new butthole because I inadvertently spilled oil into the ocean. And I very quickly reminded him about the BP oil spill that was much more than my 18 quarts of oil. But yeah, I had to fill out. He's like, you could get fined $100,000 for this. And I'm like, guy, I'm lucky to be alive. That's fine, whatever it takes. So I had to fill out some paperwork, and legally, insurance has to search for the plane for at least, I think it was 3 to 5 days. The insurance company, I notified them. They sent out divers with side scan sonar. I was in 45 feet of water, like this far from the marine sanctuary. Thankfully, I was not in the marine sanctuary, but they searched for the aircraft for almost 2 weeks and never found it. But, you've seen the Commander. I had the flaps down and the gear up, and I think it found neutral buoyancy and skipped along the bottom out into the Gulf of Mexico. I really do. Because the tail, my tail's 16 foot, 8 inches to the top of the tail. So if I'm in 45 feet of water and it's sitting on the bottom, you could see that tail sticking up.
Oh, yeah.
So they never found it. Never found the airplane.
So the plane's lost. Obviously, it's never going to be found. There's, your original logbook in there, $1,000 worth of cash, nice cowboy boots. So
bought in Austin, Texas.
Lots of different questions inside of that one on its own. How did you recreate your logbook?
Well, thankfully, I was keeping, because I'm a crazy engineer, I kept both a 4-flight logbook and my original logbook.
Okay.
And I had taken photos of the original logbook and all the signatures.
Throughout the
times. So I had all of that. So at that point, I just wrote off the original logbook, and I keep everything in 4-flight at this point. Yeah.
That's great news.
Yeah. 4-flight, it's, again, not sponsored, amazing tool for general aviation.
And then, so now the EPA has given you a rash of crap over the aircraft now being lost with oil. So that, I'm assuming that just got settled.
Yeah, that got settled. I filled out a few forms, was able to prove to them that the insurance company was trying to find the aircraft and recover it, and then they just let it go. But again, everyone else was incredibly professional, and I will give props to the FAA. The FAA investigator that was assigned to me, he actually ended up doing my commercial check ride.
Oh, awesome.
I'm a crazy person. I made friends with him, and I was friends.
Yeah.
How friendly can you be with the FAA? But he was very, very nice. He was a former Marine pilot, great guy, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do a check ride with the FAA because, now my pilot skills, I'm starting to double think some things. I want to make sure that I feel like I have what it takes to do an FAA check ride. And again, that's a whole nother episode, but I would never fear an FAA check ride. I think an FAA check ride's better than a DPE check ride.
I think you are the first person I have met that's actually gone through a FSDO check ride rather than paying for a DPE.
Yeah, and number one, you don't have to pay. I brought the guy donuts, and he didn't even eat the donuts. He's like, I can't take that. He's like, I can't take donuts. I can't take a cup of coffee. I can't have you buy me lunch. I mean, incredibly professional. I think, and I don't want to get off topic, but this is probably a good podcast episode. I think DPEs go incredibly too far and try to prove, maybe prove's the wrong word, but try to exhaust every possible option to fail a student at this point. Right. I think the point of a check ride is not to demonstrate excellence, it's to demonstrate competence and knowledge.
Right.
And hearing it firsthand from an FAA instructor or from an FAA examiner, how a check ride should be conducted, I think the DPE system should really be overhauled in the United States. I don't think it's a good system. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth for any other check rides that I might have to take, but I would seriously consider doing an FAA check ride at this point because they were very fair. They went right through the ACS. He went line by line in the ACS for the oral and for the physical check ride itself. And it was everything that you studied. With the DPE, I feel like it's you go to class and you don't get tested on the material that you've learned in class. You get tested on some other material that they think you should know, and that's not their job. Right. And again, you're demonstrating knowledge base and competence, not mastery of a skill.
Right.
So if a DPE tries to retest you or fail you that's something that's not in the ACS, call them out on it because the FAA did a fantastic job.
The one thing that everyone's going to want to know. How much were you paying for insurance on the Shrike roughly back then?
It was probably $7,500 a year on the Shrike, maybe 10 grand a year on the Shrike.
And now you've got the Turbine Commander.
Yeah.
How much of a... Okay, so how much do you pay on that, roughly?
These are good questions. So let's start with trying to get insurance after you've had a total loss on an airplane. Right? Because I immediately started looking for another airplane because I need an airplane, right? Man can't live without an airplane.
Yep.
So I start looking and I'm like, I'm done with pistons at this point. I don't want a piston aircraft anymore. I love the Commander. I don't think I would be alive necessarily if it wasn't for a Commander because it's such a rigid airframe.
Right.
I wanted a turbo Commander and I started looking through the market, found the airplane, negotiated a deal, have a loan on the airplane because it's a $1.2 million airplane, right? I used the insurance money from the Shrike because we get full hull replacement value.
Right.
I used that as a major down payment on the Turbo Commander. The thing that was holding the deal up, because you have to have insurance in order to get a loan, they're not going to close a loan with a bank until you have insurance. It took longer to find an insurance company that was willing to write me after a total loss because they look at you, whether it's your fault, the FAA ruled that it wasn't my fault. So they turn around, or the NTSB comes out and says that this isn't pilot error. And then I did a check ride with my FAA examiner. I forget the 771, 661, whatever they call it, like the check ride to make sure you're not an idiot. Right. And within 15 minutes of meeting the guy, he's like, "No, you're fine." We were having an oral discussion. We didn't have to fly. I went down to Okeechobee and met him, and or I forget what airport, but we had a discussion, and he started asking me about fuel management techniques because that's the first thing everybody said. And I don't want to get off your question, but everybody's like, "Well, you're an idiot. You forgot to put gas in your plane." The great thing in my defense was that I had on video and the receipt and the testimony from the FBO in Alabama, just south of Birmingham, that they fueled the plane, that they topped off the plane, that I had 160 gallons of fuel in that plane. So then if you do all the math, I should have between 40 and 45 gallons of fuel left, which is exactly what my fuel gauge showed. Because of the fuel system on that plane and the 12 fuel bladders that were in it, that ultimately led to the fuel starvation because we had a bladder collapse.
Right.
So that's what starved the engine of fuel. So thankfully, and even in my check ride, the FAA examiner was saying that he's had that happen on 2 King Airs because they have a very intricate bladder system as well in their wings. So I'm glad that I was able to prove that, but that didn't help me from the insurance discussion at all. The insurance company goes, nope. Finally found someone working with an amazing insurance agent, was able to get insurance. That was $42,000 for my first year of insurance. In order to be able to fly a plane that I want to fly. And it is slowly creeped down from there. Because I had 20-hour turbine time, right? I had nothing turbine time. So now I'm a young pilot that just had a crash in a plane that wants insurance on a turboprop, right? So it was expensive.
The odds are not in your favor.
And I'm buying a $1.2 million airplane. Yeah. Nothing was in my favor at all. But by the grace of God, pulled it off. Was able to get insurance. Was able to close the loan. Was able to get the airplane. And I'm actually renewing for the 4th year today. Third year today. So
nice.
It has come down considerably since then.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
That's good news. So, kind of like the first episode, what were the top 3 things you learned from that accident? I'll call that one an accident because that one was.
Yeah.
The first one.
Again, going back to a maintenance item, even if the aircraft is signed off by an A&P that it's airworthy, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's airworthy. And there are things that may or may not be items that should be inspected or checked that should get checked, right? On my new airplane, I had extended range fuel tanks put in, and I had all the bladders redone just because of the way the fuel system is. And every airplane's unique. So you need to know your airplane, know your airplane, know your airplane. And I don't mean just know how to fly it. I mean, you need to know the fuel system in and out. You need to know where your bleed air valves are located. You need to know all these things. I think you really, really should to be a good pilot. Right. GA. Now, if I'm an airline pilot, not my job, right? But I mean, you still need to know systems, of course, but you're not the guy out there changing those complex systems. But from a GA perspective, you need to know a good deal of information about your aircraft. So that's one. 2, anything can happen at any time, so be prepared for it. If you're going to fly over water, have really good life jackets. Right. So, and that's a personal minimum that changed. I went out and immediately bought very expensive life jackets that are, not the ones that are coming out of a plastic case, the ones that go around your waist. Mm-hmm. Everybody puts those on. I do not keep my cell phone in the seat next to me. If it's not in my pocket, it's in my hand, and then it goes back in my pocket. Right. So I have an EPIRB that I keep on the life raft, and then I have another Garmin inReach that I keep in the front of the cockpit. So I have now 2 sources of EPIRB, right? GPS locator. And then I have a very, very nice 6-man life raft that is always with me. Like, it lives in the plane. Right. I got the life raft and the life jackets that live in the plane. And
I just renewed my EPIRB today. With Noah. I actually just got the email, so I just renewed it.
Keep it. And when you think the battery's dead, replace it, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know. Yeah. And I've talked to pilots that are friends of mine that say, my life jackets are in my wing lockers. Well, they're not going to do you any good in a wing locker. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that I learned from that. So I also make sure that if I'm flying with passengers, I really do a full safety briefing. I go, here's the emergency exits. This person's going to do this. You're going to grab the life jackets. You're going to pass these out. Make sure you get the life raft. Here's the EPIRB. Yes, this is how you work your safety belt, but do your FAA required safety briefing, because it could really happen. Like, it really does happen.
But we're doing a fly out next week for National Key Lime Pie Day.
Okay.
Down to Key West.
Oh, awesome.
So all the planes are going. So I actually, like I say, I just renewed the EPIRB and pulled my CO2 charged life vests out.
Yeah, do that. Make sure
I'm doing the direct.
Yeah, make sure everybody knows what to do. And in a big group like that, okay, the planes that are not involved in the incident, go land. Go land. It's amazing to me, and this isn't necessarily with aviation, but how communication can be lacking sometimes, and in a stressful situation, no one knows what to do. Yep. And will forget even if you tell them. So, I would say safety briefing, safety equipment is 2, maintenance is 1, and 3. I think it would be personal minimums. What you're comfortable with as far as flying over water, not flying over water. Make sure that you as a pilot have a plan and have thought things through, because again, when I got in the plane, I almost took my dog. I've got a 3-legged dog that cannot swim because he's got 3 legs, and I almost put him in the plane with me. He flies around all the time, but I didn't that morning. And had I taken him with me, I don't know if I'd be alive, because I'd be worried about the dog. I'm I'm glad in that situation no one else was in the plane with me, because I probably would have been more worried about my passengers and their safety than anybody else's. But again, that goes back to just being prepared. The more prepared you are, the better you're going to be as a pilot. It could happen to anybody at any time.
Yeah.
It could really happen to anybody at any time. And it might be on land, it might be in the water, it might be in the mountains, it might be in the desert. Be prepared for whatever environment you're in as a pilot, because you get complacent and then you could die.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for telling the story and,
You're welcome.
giving the advice as well. I think there's a lot that people can learn. So
Appreciate you having me.
thank you. Yeah. Take care and stay safe, everyone. And Adam, we'll be back for a third episode on another incident that you were present for.
Yet another one.
Yep, yet another one. We'll see you soon. Take care and stay safe.